You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast, brought to you by focus-biz.com.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode. Our special guest today is Joshua Sanabria. He is the CEO of GoArchitect. GoArchitect specializes in creating trademark Agile Capital and equity plans for K-12 school districts. We're going to talk about everything that he does, but also go more into the professional services side of business, design and architecture, assembling a team, and software development. Joshua, so happy to have you on. How are you?
I'm doing all right. A little sore throat, but it's okay. We're going to make it. Thanks for having
Hey,
me.
it's that time of year, man. The fall, the weather changes, more, what is that stuff called? Like pollen and dander and all those wonderful fall elements that come into play and kind of make us under the weather. But really excited to have you on. Josh, tell us more about your entrepreneurial journey. What were you doing before and how did that lead you into what you're doing today?
Sure. So I would say starting a business is something I've always wanted to do from young age. Had some friends that we wanted to design roller coasters and theme parks. And then we were like, oh, let's make really cool hotels. And then somewhere in there, I figured out that I really liked architecture. I went to architecture school and kind of went down that route and worked for some corporate firms, like a lot of people do. A lot of it honestly comes down to who you get matched up to, who your boss or your company is and what they do. And I was fortunate to get teamed up with some people that were willing to take some risks and try new things. And so it gave me a lot of chances to learn how to program, learn how to do marketing, and a lot of the things around getting something built that is not necessarily obvious. So you don't necessarily just draw a building and build it right away, right? You have to figure out how to pay for it. You have to figure out who it's for and what the audience wants from it. And sometimes the audience is because it's the corporate building. Sometimes it's the school, like what we do, where your audience is a mixture of the children, the parents, staff members, even the people that maintain the building. There's quite a few audiences there. How do you speak to them? How do you gather their feedback? All that kind of stuff. So those are some things that I got to work on. And then about 6 years ago, it was a good time for a few reasons to take a leap and try something on our own. And to be honest with you, it took some time to figure out exactly what that was going to be. But I guess that's part of the journey also. Now, here we are 6 years later, and we work with a lot of school districts, basically helping them figure out what they need to build, how much it's going to cost, what their community is asking for, or maybe even in some case demanding, and how they're trying to meet that need or that growth, or even sometimes that contraction if a school district is not growing. And the question becomes, well, what do we do with all this extra space and buildings and things like that? So we throw in a little bit of technology, a little bit of marketing, web design, architecture, urban planning, all that kind of stuff into one product or service. And about 2 years ago, we thought that we needed a better strategy to package and give this service a name. So that's what the Agile Capital and Equity Plan is. It's our trademark service for K-12 school districts. We're looking to plan ahead for the next.
That is so cool. One, both the entrepreneurial journey that you wanted just to be in business, but you weren't sure how you were going to get there yet. You finally found your way.
Yep.
You found a company that was willing to take a chance on you and teach you some things. Isn't it great what our past mentors have done? Our careers, our professional lives. It truly is amazing. And I love that you niched down and really gave your product a name. You're like, this is something special. We need it to speak to the audience. And the fact that you just kind of found different problems that you could help solve that went into solving this equation for them to kind of give them that boost, which is pretty excellent. And now you're here today, 6 years after all that experience. It's incredible.
Yeah, it definitely takes a little while, but there's that old, or maybe not so old, but there's that saying where there's riches in the niches kind of thing. And I would say that not every type of project is going to be very exciting or super sexy. It's not as sexy as like building skyscrapers or something. I live in Chicago, so there's plenty of skyscrapers around, but there's problems and challenges. And maybe more importantly, for an entrepreneur, there's business opportunity, basically just sitting out waiting for somebody to do something about them. And so the idea is not really the hard part. you can pretty much actually give you some great ideas, and it will. The execution is the hard part, and how to stay focused, too focused where you don't actually see all the opportunities around something. That's a balance of a little bit of everything. And it takes a lot of time to figure it out, to be honest.
Absolutely. And for someone to go in and seize this opportunity and then just absolutely run with it is quite inspiring. What were some of the challenges that you faced over the last 6 years, kind of like starting and growing this business? And especially with a
So,
small team, were you just getting too much work at first? Or did you realize we need help in the sales or the fulfillment side? What were some of those challenges?
yeah, I would say the primary challenges in our case, finding what worked. So kind of talking about the staying focused part. When I first started the business, we had been doing these school district plans, but they were kind of a side thing. So it was making a little money. It was like, okay, we could do this. We can train some people to do this. We were charging basically on a per hour basis, stuff like that. But meantime, the primary focus was actually to try to get into the education space ourselves. So to make like books, online classes, all kinds of things basically around kind of art, architecture, education. Books are something I'm very interested in. My wife and I read a lot of books. She reads like literally 100 books a year. We have dozens and dozens of books in our house. So it was always interesting to me to make something printed and that would be cool. But books are a really hard business because you need to sell a lot of copies to make any money. And unless you are working on something that is high volume or very high price, or maybe features a famous artist or it captures some sort of zeitgeist in the culture, it's really hard for a new publisher to establish. And frankly, we just weren't able to do it. And same thing with the online classes. There's a lot of kind of false positives and moments of hope at the end of like the 2 3 years of doing that. It really wasn't paying for itself, plus providing any capital for growth. I would always stress, got to work with some cool people. That was the one benefit, but it really wasn't a sustainable business. So the only thing that was really working in the background during all of this was this architecture planning work that I was still doing. So somewhere in 2021, so like 2.5, 3 years in almost, we started at the end of 2018. So basically like 2.5 years in, I had this moment where I was like, well, the only thing that's working is this stuff for school districts. What if we just put all of our skills and time into that? And it's not always the most exciting, but it could definitely make more money. We could use all of the skills that we've gained from marketing and online digital stuff. There's room to expand. Government work is basically unlimited. Like even during COVID, when schools were closed, school districts were still planning ahead. It's definitely not something that's going to be replaced by AI anytime soon, at least, because school has multiple functions. It's not just about learning, it's also about developing social skills. It's also about, to a certain extent, daycare. It provides a bigger function than just the passing on of knowledge, right? So it's something that's going to be around for a long time. And so basically somewhere in 2021, I was like, let's focus, let's go. And basically as soon as we started to do that, it just started to work. It started to grow. We got new projects. We 10x basically our revenue. It was a no brainer afterwards, but it wasn't necessarily obvious beforehand. So I would say that was the single biggest challenge was paying attention and actually being willing to pursue it.
Honestly, Joshua, it takes
Yeah.
many other business owners much longer to even figure it out, or they never figure it out.
Or
Sometimes
you
they don't
never figured it
find,
out. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. They
Yeah.
don't find that exact thing that just fit. So for you to kind of take that step back a few years in and say, okay, what's working? How do we double
Yeah.
down on that? And let's really focus in. But that is a huge risk in itself. You don't know if it's actually going to work and how much demand there's going to be. But you
Sure.
figured it out. You made it happen. You said, well, worst can happen is we pivot again. That's another day in the life of an entrepreneur.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the worst that could have happened is that it didn't work and I would have to go back and get a traditional architecture job. I guess that would be the
'Cause
worst.
I'm
Worst.
sure after you were settled in, you'd be right back dreaming about the next opportunity. Because
Oh, for sure.
I just feel
Yeah.
like you can't take that out of someone. Was the professional world, were you kinda looking to get away from the 9 to 5? What were your motivations for wanting to own a business? Do you just wanna be your own boss, set your own
Yeah.
schedule, financial freedom?
I think because I've wanted to do it for so long, I can't really pinpoint any one particular thing. It really does come back from designing theme parks with my friend when I was a child. It's like we would go to Six Flags, which is an amusement park in the US, and we would just see the buildings and we'd see the roller coasters and everything. And there was a great video game called Roller Coaster Tycoon where you ran the theme park. And it was like one of the few video games that my parents would let me play. So I think it's just always was there. And so in college, I ran a kind of a hyper local store for one of the clubs on campus. I ran that store. I had another job where I kind of found different ways to improve our sales. I started like a little shirt company. I tried to start a very expensive drone company at one point. I don't know. There was always something going on. So I think it's more like the ideas just come to me and it's almost kind of addicting. Like I'll see something on the street or I'll go into a store and I'll just think like, oh, we could do XYZ things to improve this and XYZ to improve that. And if I own this store, I would change all of this, whatever. So I just naturally walk into a place and see the opportunity. So I think it's more like intrinsic for me rather than anything particularly pointable, if that makes sense. I think a lot of
Absolutely.
people are actually like that. They just don't necessarily follow through on any of it. I think that's different.
Absolutely. And like you said, an idea is only as good as its execution. You really have to execute something well to grow a
Ideas are a dime a
business.
dozen.
Absolutely. They're like, everyone comes to me with a great idea. How are you going to implement it? Well, I don't know. It's just a good
Yeah,
idea. Well,
go do it.
try it out.
Uh,
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that happens to me all the time. I help out with arts nonprofit here in Chicago, and everyone has these great ideas, and I'm like, "That's a great idea. Are you gonna help me do it?" That's the honest answer. Are you gonna help make it happen? Yes or no? And sometimes the answer is yes, and a lot of times the answer is no. So it's
Well,
almost worth nothing to me when people come up to me with ideas. I used to get frustrated. Now I get slightly less frustrated. I just kind of ask them if they're gonna help or not.
and I don't think a lot of people realize with any successful business owner, entrepreneur, you're only seeing the one idea that actually succeeded, one that worked. You don't see the 9 other failures that happen. But you're like, I tried this, I tried that. It's just us kind of finding our way, finding the right
Yeah,
fit for us and what works.
yeah, it's true.
Now, in your business, after the 3-year mark, you've pivoted, you've kind of focused in on your niche, your offer, the
Yeah.
messaging. Now, how are you growing your client base? Was this a lot of outreach? Was this relationship building?
Right.
Was it just referrals from past clients?
Yes. 100% basically referrals and building on previous projects. So, for example, even just yesterday, we got a request from our fifth school district come back and basically do more work. So we had at this point we've worked with like 21 or 22 different districts. My hope is that eventually we will cycle through all 20 of them plus whatever comes in the future. I think that's a huge one. Return business, obviously. Then there are a couple of things that really worked. So was extremely blessed that when I worked at this corporate firm, I had made some good connections and people liked what was happening. So when I left, they actually became some of my first client, one particular office in that firm. And so by having them as a larger partner, we are able to go after projects where we would be challenging for us to go after them alone. But with this larger partner, we're now basically part of a team and so we just slide right in and we're responsible for a certain number of things. And so maintaining that partnership, building off of it, expanding it to different offices, different project managers. One thing that people may or may not know about large corporate firms is that a lot of times different offices act almost as miniature firms of their own. And so just because you work with the New York City office or whatever, doesn't mean you have any actual access to the Chicago office. And so you need to build those relationships. And maybe one office knows one guy, but that's not even guaranteed either. So we've spent a lot of time trying to expand into like new partners, basically, because that's the easiest way for us to get new work and keep those returning clients is the partnerships. Now, it's different for every business. In architecture, it's very rare that one group does every single thing, right? You have the architect, you have the contractor, you have maybe the environmental review, you have the lawyers. You could easily have 6 or 7 different companies on one project. So in our case, it's beneficial to be a good partner and to present ourselves as a good partner rather than a competitor.
Absolutely. And I think it's a testament to your business that you have so many referrals, repeat clients continuing to come back and spread the
Yeah.
word for you. I can't imagine a lot of these school districts are sitting around waiting for a Facebook ad to pop up and say, oh, that's the architect I'd like to work with. No, so
Nobody
you
does.
need trust and credibility, and the partnerships definitely contribute to that.
No. Facebook ads, Instagram ads, all that is useless. We don't even have a Facebook page. We don't even have our Instagram page. We have a website. But anytime you work with a city, a state, government entity of any type, basically you are responding to RFPs, the requests for proposals, which will have all kinds of little requirements. And those RFPs do not give a crap if you had a Facebook ad or not. So it's not worth the time or money. If we were still
No.
selling books though, or online classes, sure, great. Direct to consumer ads, probably worth it.
Exactly. It's just
Yeah.
based on the audience and how you need to reach them, where they're making their decisions, where they're thinking and
Right.
talking about these things. It's just not the right channel or medium for that
Yeah.
audience, which is
Yeah.
perfect. It's just something you learn as you go, which is something we have to handle
Yeah.
as business owners. With the RFPs that come in through the winning bid is always the lowest number. Is that always the case, or is it always money motivated? Or are there other factors that play into that for you winning that proposal?
Money is obviously a factor. It's not the only factor by any means. So different entities will have different requirements. For example, for a city of Chicago project, you must be located in the Chicago region. I think the radius is like 100 miles or something. So you have to have an office within 100 miles. It doesn't matter if your bid is $1. If you're out, you're not going to get the project. So there's things like that. A lot of it though comes down to what is the end result? What are they hoping for with the end result? Theoretically, right? They're not going to go after somebody that's not qualified or that doesn't fit any of these minimum requirements, like being within a certain distance or having a certain group, maybe that they worked on a project. Like, for example, I would say impossible for us to be hired on an airport project. So specialized and so different from what we currently do. I don't even think I'd feel comfortable going after that project, right? Even if I bid a small amount, don't think I could do those projects. So I think it's that type of stuff. People have to know what they're capable of, what the kind of stretch item that they're capable of, because you can always improve, obviously, and then find the appropriate partners or be an appropriate partner for somebody else who is going after. So I think you have to communicate what you're bringing to the table in all scenarios, especially for a B to B business.
Absolutely. You definitely need to know your limitations. Just this past week, I had a request for quote for DJ services for a company's IT party. And I was thinking maybe
It-
50, 60 people for this department. No, it's 400 people. So when I
Hey,
was asking more details and they said we need sound setups in 2 rooms for 400 people. And I said, I got to pause you right there. I just don't think I'm the right fit. I know when to stretch and when this isn't the right fit for us. So that's a specialty that just we weren't interested in. So as much it is about finding the right clients, it's vice versa.
right.
They want the right business to be able to come in and
Yeah.
help them too.
Yeah. Like your scenario, right? Let's say that you did decide to do that. You would probably be able to charge a good amount, obviously, but then you would need to buy the equipment, maybe hire some part time or full time for the event. And then you'd have all the costs accumulated for this one thing. So then that means that you better start going after other 400 person parties or else your speaker costs and other equipment costs are only spread out over one event. So it's like, sure, you could do it, but you better be prepared to go after more of those types of projects in the future.
Right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just taking on this one-time cost, and really that expense should be spread out.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You're storing extra speakers for nothing.
I just got an entire garage full of speakers. Like, I'm never going to use this again. It happens though. Now you mentioned
Rent them, I guess. Yeah.
you mentioned you're a book lover. You and your wife love to read books. What are some of the most impactful books that you've read or you might recommend to others?
Oh, yeah. Well, let's see. I'll look back at my little thing here. So there's a good book by Chris Troka. He's the guy that talks about negotiation. He has a master class and a bunch of YouTube videos. But his book is actually pretty good. It's about communication and how to get your point across without being overtly manipulative, but definitely guiding the conversation to where you want it to go. So a lot of it is pretty common sense when you think about it. It's how to questions that are not just yes, no, how to ask questions that disarm a person or client or customer. So I'd say that's a really good one, both for just life and business. Blue Ocean Strategy is another book. I don't remember the authors, but basically the concept is that a blue ocean is a area of business where there are very few competitors, and a red ocean is where there's many competitors. So there's blood in the water, metaphorically. And so you can essentially create your own blue ocean by being in a niche where there's not many people serving that niche. And so in a way, we are a good example of that. There are not many firms, I mean, I could maybe count them on like one or two hands, that do work with K through 12 facility master planning, long-term planning. There's just not that many. So we do have some competitors, sure, but we've tried to make it as much of a blue ocean as possible. But
That is really
definitely
smart.
the books. Those are good. Those are not very big books either. They're pretty approachable.
And the communication, negotiation, that is so helpful in everyday life,
Yep.
your professional life, your business. How we communicate and interact with each other can really move the needle within our business and help develop and nurture relationships. So those skills are very important. I'm glad that you mentioned them. And it's just about finding the right fit, finding the right market, the right industry, the profession you want to go for, and then just running with that. Joshua, where can more people find out more about you online and get connected with you?
Personally, probably LinkedIn is a good space. You can go to the GoArchitect website. That's also a very easy way to learn more about us.
We'll have links available down in the show notes and the description so you can get connected with Joshua and his company here. Now, Josh, is there anything that you wish your younger self, like if you could go back in time and tell your younger self something, anything from future you to say, hey, this is what you need to focus on, what you need to do, what would that advice be?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time stressing about getting venture capital money and coming up with ideas that I thought were venture capital focused ideas, like this drone company that I briefly mentioned, where to make it successful, we would have needed millions of dollars and engineering skills that nobody in the team had and things like that. Instead of focusing maybe on an idea that was slightly smaller, but could be accomplished with either the skills that we immediately had or we could immediately learn. And there's a lot of time, lots of money, and some heartbreak, let's say, in there spent on making something that was way too big. So I guess the idea, or I would say to myself, is be bold within, like, maybe there's a better way to put this. Or should have better at little short snippet words of wisdom,
No, you're doing great.
but
Yeah,
be bold, but like be focused. Or
yes,
something like
absolutely.
that.
And just so you know, my assistant Angie can go in and make us both sound really smart. So she'll edit this. We'll get that short, hot snippet that, that you were thinking of.
Oh, good. Yeah. Be bold, be focused. Definitely take risks. Take lots of little small ones. Search for ideas that are on the periphery. Search for ideas that are in the blue oceans. And don't be afraid, which I don't feel like I ever was afraid, which is good. So I would actually give my advice to me now is to be not afraid. Some advice in both directions.
Technically, your past self can be like an hour from, now a couple days before. So yeah, that's your past self. What are you most excited for to wrap up 2024? Any exciting initiatives or projects you're kind of going into 2025 with?
Yeah, definitely. So I think at this point we're making some stepping stones. So we have a lot of these projects under our belt. We can obviously do more and expand them. I am currently studying to get basically what's called a planning license, AICP license. I'm taking that test next month. So cross my fingers that I pass that. And basically that will enable us to go after even larger projects, more focused on kind of citywide projects. I think it'd be really cool to expand our scale beyond just school district, but take everything that we've learned on the marketing and technology side and finance side and now apply it to much more public facing and larger projects. I mean, in my dream, we work with Chicago Bears want to build a stadium on the water. Well, that project, somebody on that project had done the urban planning and design and analysis. I would assume it's somebody on the architecture team. It obviously had hit some political roadblocks and there's a bunch of things. And it's just a small example of a mega project that could use maybe some better consideration or at least some other consideration. So what I've observed with that one is that they need not only better marketing, but they need to be more innovative. For example, if I were on that project, I would propose a completely different finance structure where we securitize, which means that we make the stadium and surrounding area into a stock, much like Madison Square Garden is in New York City. And we create a company for the Bears XYZ Stadium development, and we sell shares in that development to the city of Chicago. And people can buy shares that earn a dividend in their own stadium. Now, that is like pretty revolutionary. As far as I know, only Madison Square Garden has done that. But when we're talking about a $2 billion asset that's going to be used all year round for the next 50 years, not to mention all the other stuff, there's no reason why we shouldn't be innovative from the beginning. But all these stupid projects like the Bears Stadium, the White Sox thing that guy wants to build, and a lot of other ones are thinking very kind of 20th century taxpayers. Nobody wants that anymore. And maybe we shouldn't have done that 20 years ago, but we definitely don't need to do it now. And so there needs to be a little bit of innovation in these kind of large scale projects. And that's not only the sports project, but there's plenty of other ones in town and around the country that could use a little bit of new thinking. So in this like Creighton scenario, maybe in 6 more years, we are a consultant for the Bears or somebody like that. And we're helping them put together an entire kind of investment marketing package to sell stock in the stadium. Something like that
I
would
love
be
the
really
idea.
great.
Honestly, if taxpayers are going to end up paying for this anyways, as they have been for many years, otherwise the team
Yeah.
just leaves the city and goes find money elsewhere. We need to look at things a bit differently now and
Yeah.
try some new things.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's money around, but people hate taxes, obviously. People want investment. And we have the technology maybe 30, 40 years ago to create a public company around a single asset was kind of a dumb idea. But one thing that came around from 2020, it gets a little technical, but there's these things called SPAC, special acquisition vehicles, that were put together for small electric car companies that have since gone bust. These were very small deals where they were selling stock in like tiny companies with no revenue, no assets, nothing. And they were making tons of money on the sales. The process to get that size has gotten so much easier. There's no reason why we cannot securitize large asset like a stadium where Taylor Swift and all of the other Taylor Swifts can come and play and the city can reap the benefits and earn the revenue or a revenue share from the asset itself. I mean, that seems fair to me.
Absolutely. And it's this type of forward thinking that is going to progress our society and give more control and power to the actual people rather than these multi-billionaire sports teams owner who wants to build their new stadium off of our tax dollars. It's unfortunate, but we need
Yeah.
new ideas.
Yeah. New ideas for sure. So
I love it.
that'll be the next campaign. We'll see how that goes.
That'll be the
I might be
initiative of
talking about giant disaster.
This was my drone idea. This could be your niche down specialization. into the K-12. Like you said, be bold,
And we
take
don't.
those risks. Future
And we
Josh
don't.
is telling younger Josh what he's got to do. So you're doing great
That's
out there.
right.
But
Right.
you're climbing mountains, you're moving, you're making moves out there, which is incredible to see. So excited to watch your journey unfold. Josh, we appreciate you taking the time and we thank you for coming on.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Of course, my pleasure.